You're listening to The Visibility Advantage, the podcast for senior leaders and business owners who want to build strategic presence in a world being reshaped by AI. I'm your host, Lynette Johnston, a LinkedIn and AI visibility specialist and author. I'm here to help you become as visible as you are valuable. Let's get into it. Welcome to the Visibility Advantage. In an earlier episode, I talked about the first foundation of the linkability blueprint, discovery. That's the question of whether the right people can find you at all, whether LinkedIn systems and the AI tool sitting on top of them can locate you when someone searches for your expertise. Today, we go one layer deeper. Because even if you can be found, what happens in the 3 seconds after someone lands on your profile? That's perception. And it's the second of the 4 foundations of the linkability blueprint. Let me give you an example. A conference organizer is putting together the speaker lineup for one of the biggest industry events of the year. They're looking for a keynote speaker, specifically someone with deep expertise in a particular field. They don't call a speakers bureau, they open an AI tool and type in the expertise they need. A name comes up. It's not the most experienced person in that field, not by a long way, but it's the person the AI could find, read, and confidently recommend. The keynote goes to them. The most experienced person in that room, they weren't in the room at all. The AI had never heard of them. This is what a perception gap costs, and that's what today's episode is all about. Perception, as I use the word here, isn't about spin. It's not about crafting an image. It's something more specific and honestly more uncomfortable than that. Perception's the gap between how you see yourself and your value and how the world outside your immediate organization and in-person network sees you. That gap exists whether you know about it or not. And for most senior leaders, it is much larger than they realize. Because the rules have changed. For most of your career, your reputation will have traveled through relationships. Someone you've worked with refers you. A colleague mentions your name in a room you're not in. A board member who knows your track record puts you forward. You get headhunted because someone who's seen your work knows someone who needs it. You're invited to speak because the event organizer has heard of you from people they trust. That system has worked. For decades, it has worked extremely well for accomplished people, and it still works. I want to be clear about that. Relationships still matter enormously, but here's what's changed. That system used to be the only system. Now it's one of 2. And the second system, the one that's running alongside it, operates on completely different rules. The second system is data-based. It doesn't care who you know, it can't see your track record unless your track record is written down somewhere it can read. It doesn't know that you're the most experienced person in your field unless your digital footprints says so, clearly, specifically, and in language that both human readers and AI systems can interpret. That second system is LinkedIn's algorithm. It's the AI tools that conference organizers, executive recruiters, board chairs, and media researchers are now using as their first filter. And it's the AI assistants that people are asking questions of, like, who are the leading experts in sustainable finance in Australia? Or Who should we consider for a non executive director role with experience in digital transformation? The people who appear in those answers are not necessarily the most experienced, they're the most visible. They've made their expertise readable to systems that can't call a reference or shake a hand. Here's the thing that most senior leaders I work with haven't yet absorbed: the shift has already happened. This isn't a future scenario. The conference organizer I mentioned at the top of the episode, that's not a hypothetical. That happened. The keynote went to a less experienced person because the more experienced person had no meaningful digital footprint for an AI to find and read. And here's the part that makes this particularly insidious: the person who just lost that opportunity doesn't even know they lost it. They weren't shortlisted and then rejected. They were never in the conversation. The gap was invisible to them because they didn't know the second system existed, let alone that it was already making decisions about them. So let's talk about where the gap lives, because build your online presence is advice so vague it's useless. What specifically is creating the gap for most senior leaders? In my experience, it almost always comes down to one core problem: their online footprint is tiny, and what little exists doesn't reflect their actual experience, seniority, or accomplishments. Why? Not because they're not proud of what they've achieved, but because until now they haven't needed to document it publicly. Their reputation has travelled through people, not pages. They've been promoted, headhunted, invited to speak, and appointed to boards based on what the people around them know, not based on what a search engine or an AI tool can surface. So their LinkedIn profile was set up years ago, updated occasionally when something changed, and left to sit. It reads like a CV, a list of roles and dates. The About section is a few dry lines, or it's been left blank entirely. The headline just says their job title. There's no content, no evidence of their thinking, no signal to LinkedIn or AI that says, this is what I know, this is why it matters, this is who I serve. And then there's the rest of the internet: a short bio on their company website, maybe a mention in a media article from 3 years ago, a profile on a professional directory they signed up for once and then forgot about. That's their entire digital footprint. That's what the second system has to work with. Now, let me get specific about where perception lives inside LinkedIn, because the linkability blueprint identifies 5 elements that both people and AI read in those first few seconds. Number 1, your headline. Your headline is the single most indexed piece of text on your LinkedIn profile. It appears in search results, in AI summaries, in connection request previews, in comments. And for most senior leaders, it says something like Chief Executive Officer of company name. That tells LinkedIn your job title and your employer. It does not tell LinkedIn, or any human reading it, what you actually know, what problems you solve, or who you serve. It's a label, not a value statement. Number 2, your banner image. The banner is the large image behind your headshot. Most people have the default blue gradient that LinkedIn provides. Some have a photo of their city or a landscape. Very few have a banner that actually communicates what they stand for. Your banner is seen by every single person who visits your profile. And for most senior leaders, it says nothing at all. Number 3, your About section. The About section is where you have the most space to tell your story. It's also the section most senior leaders either leave blank or fill with a third person biography written from their own perspective. A list of achievements that says everything about what they've done and nothing about why it matters to the person reading it. AI tools read the About section to understand your area of expertise. If it's vague, if it covers too many topics, if it's written in corporate language that could belong to anyone, the AI will have trouble categorizing you. And a professional it can't categorize is one it can't confidently recommend. Number 4, proof points. Credibility on LinkedIn isn't claimed, it's demonstrated. That means specific evidence, the size of the organizations you've led, the outcomes you've delivered, the projects that changed things, the boards you sit on, the recognition you've received. These details exist in your career. They just haven't made it onto your profile. Without them, your profile makes assertions. With them, it makes a case. And number 5, consistency. The fifth element is the one that's easiest to overlook and hardest to fix quickly. Perception requires consistency between what your headline says, what your About section says, what your posts say, and what your comments say. When those things align, LinkedIn's algorithm treats you as a credible or authoritative voice on a topic. When they don't align, when your headline says one thing and your content says something else, the signal is mixed, and mixed signals are the enemy of discoverability. Before we talk about how to close the gap, I want to give you an exercise. It's simple, it takes only about 5 minutes, and it will show you your perception gap more clearly than anything I could tell you. Open whatever AI tool you use, ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, doesn't matter. Type in a prompt along these lines. Who are the most well-known experts in your field, in your country or region? Read the list it gives you. If your name is on that list, great. Note where you sit and think about whether the description the AI gives of your work actually reflects your current expertise and focus. If your name is not on that list, that's your perception gap right there. Not a theoretical gap, not something to think about later. Proof in real time that the second system does not know who you are. The people on that list are not necessarily more experienced than you. In many cases, they're not. But they have a digital footprint that the AI can read and understand and confidently cite. You don't yet. I say yet deliberately. This is not a fixed state. The gap is closable. But you can't close a gap you haven't measured. And most senior leaders have never paused to look. Now, I know what a significant number of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, I hear all of this, I know it's important, but I genuinely do not have time for this. I want to push back on that gently but directly. Recently, I had a conversation with Leanne Davey, a New York Times best-selling author and organizational scientist who works with leadership teams at some of the world's largest companies. She's written 3 books on how leaders think, work, and relate, and her most recent one, Thought Load, gets into exactly why so many of us feel overwhelmed despite not actually getting that much done. I asked her about the "I'm too busy" response because that's what I hear constantly from the senior leaders I work with. Almost without exception, they know they need to be more visible. They know their LinkedIn profile doesn't reflect their expertise. They know the second system is running without them. And yet, I'm just too busy. Leanne's answer to this really landed. She said, "Busy just says to me your priorities aren't clear. People use busy as a badge of honor. And to me, busy is just an admission of defeat." What it sounds like is that they haven't connected their visibility to an outcome they actually think is important. She went on to explain it this way: when leaders disconnect an activity from an outcome, it doesn't feel like a priority. It just feels like one more thing on a very long to do list. But once you connect visibility, LinkedIn content, your profile, to a specific outcome you care about, the calculus changes entirely. One of Leanne's examples was her own. She's building her international keynote speaking career. So every hour she spends on LinkedIn, every post she shares, every comment she leaves, it's not activity for its own sake. It's connected to a specific destination. And when she gets an invitation to appear on an international live stream, she can trace it directly back to the visibility work that put her in the right person's field of view. She made another point that stuck with me too. We often think about LinkedIn as something you do when things are going well or when you're looking for work. We scroll, we post occasionally, we accept connection requests. But the 95% rule changes how you should think about this. At any given moment, roughly 95% of the people in your professional world are not in an active buying, hiring, or appointing cycle. They're not looking for a speaker right now. They're not shortlisting for a board seat right now. They're not searching for an advisor right now. But they're watching occasionally, passively, and when the moment does come, that 5% window when they do need exactly what you offer, the person they think of first is the one who's been in their peripheral vision all along. Consistent, credible, visible. That's not advertising. That's not hustling. That's just making sure the second system has enough of you to work with when it matters. Let me ask you to do what Leanne suggested. Before you decide whether this is worth your time, answer one question. What is the most important outcome for you or your business that you need to make headway on in the next 12 months? A board seat? A keynote speaking career? A new advisory practice? Clients in a new market? A senior appointment you've been working toward? Being known outside the walls of the organization you currently work within? Write it down. Be specific, because once you have that outcome clearly in view, the question of whether LinkedIn is worth your time becomes much easier to answer. The question changes from "do I have time for this?" to "can I afford not to make time for this?" And the mechanics of it, as Leanne pointed out, are more manageable than most people imagine. The leaders who have built real visibility don't do it by posting every day. They did it by batching, carving out a small, dedicated window to create content, review their profile, and engage meaningfully, and then letting consistency do the rest. A couple of hours a month, used wisely, can build more visibility over 12 months than sporadic bursts of activity separated by long silences. I want to share something concrete with you now because I think one of the reasons it's hard to prioritize this work is that the results are slow and invisible at first. You update your headline, you rewrite your about section. Nothing happens. You post something, 12 people like it. You think this is just not worth it. So let me tell you what it actually looks like when you do this consistently over time, because I have a client whose story relates to this. She runs a telecommunications company. When she started working on her visibility, she had around 1,500 LinkedIn followers and fewer than 300 profile visits in any given 90-day period. She was known in her immediate professional circle, but outside it, she was effectively invisible. Less than 18 months later, she has more than 4,000 high quality followers. Her profile is now receiving over 700 visits in a 90-day period, more than double what it was. At a time when post reach has become increasingly compressed across the platform, her content regularly generates thousands of impressions. Her LinkedIn newsletter reaches 1,200 subscribers every month. And best of all, she's started to be invited to appear as a guest on podcasts. But here's the part I want you to hear most clearly. None of this happened randomly. Every single piece of this was built in service of a specific outcome she'd identified at the start, an outcome she's been working toward deliberately, step by step, ever since. The visibility isn't the end goal, it's the means. That's the difference between strategic visibility and noise. Noise is activity without a destination. Strategic visibility is consistent, deliberate effort connected to something that matters, and it compounds over time in ways that are hard to predict but impossible to miss once they start happening. The profile visits become inbound messages. The inbound messages become conversations. The conversations become opportunities. And none of that is possible if the second system doesn't know you exist. So, how do you actually close the perception gap? Let me be honest about what this involves and what it doesn't. It does not require you to post every day. It does not require you to become a LinkedIn influencer or develop a personal brand that makes you cringe every time you look at it. It does not require you to share opinions on things you don't care about or perform a version of yourself that doesn't feel like you. What it does require is that your LinkedIn profile accurately and specifically reflects your expertise. And there are 5 places to start. Start with your headline. Your headline should name your expertise, not your title. What do you actually know? What problems do you solve? Who do you solve them for? Those 3 things compressed into a line that a search engine can index and a human can understand in just 2 seconds. The difference in practice looks like this. Chief Executive Officer at XYZ company tells the second system nothing about what you know or why you matter. But helping telecommunications companies build the infrastructure for a connected Pacific tells a completely different story. And it's a story that gets found. Positioning is more powerful than titles. People remember clear positioning. AI systems recognize consistent patterns. Both benefit from the same thing, a headline that says something real. Then, your about section. Your about section needs to be written from your reader's point of view, not your own. Rather than a biography that lists what you've done, it should be a story that explains why your experience matters to the person reading it. Open with who you help and what outcomes you create. Use short paragraphs and clear language. Structure it so it's easy to scan. Areas of expertise, who you help, the outcomes you deliver, and the evidence that supports it. Close with how to reach you. The test is simple. After reading your About section, should a visitor be able to answer what you do, who do you help, what are you known for, and why should they trust you? If those answers aren't clear, the section isn't doing its job. Add the proof points. Specific details make credibility concrete rather than claimed. The organizations you've led, the outcomes you've delivered, the scale, the stakes, the board you sit on, the projects that changed things. These details are sitting in your career. They just need to make it onto your profile, as I've already said. Your experience section is evidence, not autobiography. Each role is an opportunity to show what you achieved, not just what you were responsible for. Anyone can claim expertise. Evidence is what turns claims into credibility. Think about your featured section. Your featured section is your proof section. This is where you demonstrate your expertise, not just describe it. It's a keynote clip, a media appearance, a published article, a piece of work you're proud of. Curate it deliberately. The question to ask is not what can I feature, but what evidence best demonstrates my expertise to someone who has never met me. Authority is not built by showing everything. It's built by showing the right things. Then, and only then, your activity. Once your profile reflects your expertise accurately, the content you share reinforces it. Until then, it can't. A strong post is wasted if the profile it leads to doesn't back it up. And when you're ready to engage, remember, comments are content. A thoughtful, substantive comment on someone else's post puts your name, headline, and expertise in front of everyone who engages with that post, including people who have never heard of you. 10 minutes of genuinely useful engagement a day can build more real visibility than a posting schedule that takes hours. And it's not broadcasting, it's participating. Authority is built through participation, not broadcasting. Now, I want to name something important here. The work of rewriting these sections isn't trivial, not because it's technically difficult, but because the hardest thing for most senior leaders isn't writing about themselves, it's knowing which parts of their story to lead with. Which details will land with the right audience? How to translate 25 years of complex, varied experience into a profile that's clear and specific and compelling without losing the depth that makes it true. Leanne Davey talked about how ideas develop, how Simon Sinek didn't begin with a fully formed start with why. He started with a 2-minute observation. He tried it at an open mic. He refined it. He tried it again. He worked it into a speech. Years later, it became a global framework. The Netflix special is built on 1,000 2-minute sets that nobody remembers except the person who lived them. LinkedIn works the same way. You don't start with a polished personal brand. You start with one clear sentence about what you know. You find the language that feels true to you. You try a post that says one thing well. Over time, and it does take time, the picture becomes clear to people who've never met you, never worked with you, and wouldn't otherwise know you exist. My client in telecoms didn't arrive at 4,000 followers in a single campaign. She arrived there through 18 months of consistency with a clear outcome in mind and a profile that gave the second system something to work with from day one. That's what this work actually looks like. Not a rebrand, not a viral moment, a profile that accurately reflects your expertise, a clear connection between your visibility and an outcome you care about, and enough consistent presence over time for both people and AI to understand what you do and why it matters. If there's one thing I'd ask you to take away from this episode, it's this. The second system is already running. It's already making decisions about who gets found, who gets considered, and who gets the room. The question isn't whether you need to care about this. The question is whether you know exactly where your visibility stands right now and what it's costing you. If you don't know the answer to that, the Executive Strategic Visibility Review was built to tell you. It's a one-off audit that looks at exactly where your visibility stands across all four foundations of the linkability blueprint. What's working, what's missing, what to focus on first. And you can find the details for that in the show notes. That's it for this episode of the Visibility Advantage podcast. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd love it if you shared it with a colleague. If you're ready to understand exactly where your own visibility stands, our linkability blueprint is a great first step. You'll find the details in the show notes. And if you haven't already, hit follow or subscribe wherever you're listening so you don't miss the next episode. I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.